going on, everybody? This is your boy, Craig James from MasculineByDesign.com. This is the Masculine by Design Mancast, episode number 17. We're going to talk about how masculine men are by design. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to give you a quick reminder to head on over to iTunes, search for the Masculine by Design Mancast, leave me a 5-star review to pay it forward for all the value you get from these podcasts. If you don't get any value, I don't know why you're listening, so I suggest you spend your time elsewhere on something that is more profitable for you personally. And also, if you have not done so already, be sure to go to MasculineByDesign.com, enter your email in any of the sign-up forms there to subscribe so you can stay up to date with all new postings and podcasts and all the content that I'll be releasing here in the near future. And you'll also get a free copy of my ebook, Masculine by Design, where I talk about 4 specific principles that are actionable that men can put into place right away to have a positive impact on their lives, to stand out in our emasculated culture for their benefit. So definitely a book you want to read. It's a pretty short read. It's very actionable, something you can put to use right away. So give it a read. Go to MasculineByDesign.com, get your copy, give it a read, let me know what you think, and start enhancing your life by enacting those principles today. All right, so back to the topic of masculine men are by design. So we start thinking about what it means to be masculine. I pondered that for quite a while. I created MasculineByDesign.com because I recognize that there are certain aspects of a man's life that sets him apart from women, things that are given to him for his benefit. And I really wanted to evaluate that in my own life, find ways to optimize that so that I could function as a man was designed to function for my benefit, for the benefit of my family, for the benefit of society, and also to help other people, help other men along that path as well. But before I could do that, I had to settle on what being masculine entailed. What does that mean? What is the definition of masculinity? You know, is a man masculine just because he's born with a pair of balls? Does that make him masculine because he has testicles? Does it require us to develop certain characteristics or personal traits that will prove our mettle as men? And who has the authority to define what it means to be masculine? So I really grappled with these things for a while. I think innately and instinctively, I had a pretty good idea of what properties constituted masculinity. And I think a lot of guys that I've encountered have the same idea, but really qualifying it and putting it together in a good, cohesive package or definition that I could hold on to and use to communicate that message, it was missing. So before I really even started doing much writing on the website, I wanted to settle that in my own mind. And in order to do that, I obviously was looking through the lens of my Christian worldview. So as I was going through evaluating what it means to be masculine, I had those presuppositions, which we all have. So it's not unique to Christians. It's not unique to myself. All of us have certain presuppositions, a certain worldview with which we view things and come to conclusions through those lenses. So when we have that lens, we tend to use those lenses to draw conclusions. And so people with differing worldviews or different presuppositions typically draw different conclusions. And it's not that the data or the information or even the experience that these people have are any different. We all have the same data. If you talk about politically conservatives, liberals, or even spiritually, Christians, agnostics, atheists, they all have the same information at their disposal, but they draw different conclusions because they are coming to a belief or a ascertaining of truth within the spheres of their individual presuppositions. And so it really makes sense when you think about it. When we have a worldview, the way that we view things, the way that we evaluate the world around us, the way that we arrive at truth, to have that shaken or to view things through any other lens is really kind of illogical. It would be cognitive dissonance. And it would imply that our worldview or our presuppositions are not valid, they're not good enough, and there's a better system out there that we need to be implementing. And so it would cause us to have a moment where we need to really think deeply about what we believe and why, demolish that and build it back up from the ground up to have a more coherent lens or set of presuppositions with which we analyze the world from. And so that does actually happen from time to time. I had that happen to me. I was an agnostic for many years, up until I graduated from college. And I've found a lot of holes in the way that I was able to arrive at truth or arrive at meaning and purpose in my own life by having that worldview. And so it was imperfect in my mind. It was not valid. And so I tore that down, and I accepted Christ as my Savior, became a Christian. And that was a big turning point in my life. A lot of confusion, a lot of hard work, a lot of research, a lot of thinking that went into that. And what I notice is that when men come to those conclusions, it's usually after a time of great distress, or whether that's mental, emotional, and that really kind of forces them to be intellectually honest about their beliefs, about the way that they view the world. And this perfect storm of conditions that brings on this complete reconstruction of the way somebody evaluates the world, that's how a lot of men finally arrive at the truth of how gender dynamics play out. And that's commonly described as swallowing the red pill. So when a man used to think that doing everything the woman asked him to do everything he could to please her, to treat her like a princess, to wait on her hand and foot, and then to have a woman that he does all the right things, turn around and cheat on him or hand him divorce papers. That's a moment of truth. That's a time for the man to realize that what he had thought existed between his relationship as a man to her as a woman really wasn't the way things were in reality. The things that he was doing was not what she really wanted from in a man, even though she may have said that, and even though society may have conditioned him to believe that. And so that required him to really go introspective, swallow the red pill, and realize that he needs to pay more to what women do instead of what they say. Start living for himself, to self-actualize his masculinity, to work on his own mission in life, find a woman that's going to be a complement to that, and have a relationship where they build each other up, and she's not the sole focal point of his being. Now, when it comes to presuppositions or worldviews, I was a little bit taken aback by what I found as I was digging into what different people believe to be masculine. As I said earlier, I did find that most men kind of instinctively understand what that means, or at least the values that are associated with masculinity. And what I found was that even though men may differ from where they believe that masculinity comes from, so whether we are naturalists, evolutionists who believe that our masculinity is a product of evolution, or whether we believe in Christianity and we believe that it was endowed upon us by Almighty God, which is what I believe, and that is what I'll explain a little bit later in the podcast. I was surprised to find that even though we come from differing backgrounds on where we believe that masculinity comes from, there's almost a near universal consensus among men about what it means to be masculine, which was really cool. And I noticed that experientially as well, as I've been interacting with different men on Twitter that I know have different backgrounds, different worldviews. They're not Christians as I am, yet we all have the same ideas about what it means to be a man, to have physical strength, to act virtuously, to really raise our children with the masculine example that they need, to be providers, to be problem solvers, to not let emotions rule the day in our decision making and in our thought processes. So it was just really cool to see that. And I found that through other sources as well. In his book, The Way of Men, Jack Donovan describes that he discovered the same thing, the same universal recognition of what it means to be masculine. He looked across various cultures across the sum of human history and found that they all had similar ideas regarding what the ideal masculine man looked like. And so Jack Donovan characterizes that essence of masculinity into four groups, being strength, courage, mastery, and honor, which I'd like to break that down a little further, and I'm going to, as I'll talk about here in a few minutes. But he found that these are the universal traits that men were they strove to have. It's what the women wanted from their men. It's what provided the greatest benefit to society as men unleashed those properties on the world and in their cultures and in their tribes. So I just thought that was really cool that, no matter what the background was that we came from, whatever presuppositions we may have had, there's still, no matter what culture people come from, there's still a near universal concept of what being masculine is. And I also want to talk a little bit about the harmonious nature that exists between masculinity and femininity. The masculine and feminine, they're not opposed to each other. They complete each other. They're complementary. Each fills the void that the other lacks the capacity to fill. So back to the way I view things. I believe that man and woman were created intentionally by God with these distinct biological, psychological, and anatomical profiles that complement each other. And there's a specific purpose to that. And that specific purpose, which is talked about a lot in Scripture, is marriage. That is the reason that the masculine and the feminine complement each other. It's to benefit the husband and wife in their marriage relationship, along with benefiting the children that might result from it. And this is consistent with what we see throughout human civilizations in history. We see that societies where the traditional family, where there's a man and a woman and they raise their children, where that dynamic thrives, the societies are healthy, they're emotionally balanced, they are civil societies. And then on the flip side, when you see societies where that isn't the case, the children are emotionally distraught. The mothers and fathers tend to be more steeped in poverty. Society is not as economically strong. Crime rates are higher. But when a man and woman come together and they complement each other, it's a benefit to both the husband and wife and the kids. Now, I think it's also important to point out that many of the characteristics, if not all of the characteristics that we might identify as being masculine, they're not solely relegated to men. Women have them as well. The difference really lies in how those traits are expressed by each sex. So, the traits that we have that we recognize as being being masculine as men, they're not unique to us, but they are unique in the way that we express them. And so I try to think of some examples of that, and there are many. But one of the best ones that I could think of is the way that men and women, we both possess the capacity to love. I don't think anybody would argue against that. But we express that love in different ways based on our natures, based on the way that we've been designed to express that love. And so one is masculine, one is feminine, and they complement each other. So men, we love using our minds predominantly. There's some crossover, but predominantly men love we love by using our minds. We love by giving somebody truth, by imparting wisdom to them, by giving them some information from our own experience or knowledge that will help them so that they can avoid catastrophe or avoid danger or avoid some ill circumstance in their lives. That's one of the main ways that we love as men, is by imparting truth. And women, they love by sharing compassion. They share sympathy. They're nurturing emotionally. And so we can see that dynamic. It's not that men have love and women don't, or vice versa. We both have love. It's just the way that we express that love is masculine, whereas the way women express it is feminine. So one's not necessarily better than the other. Both are needed. They're both important. They're necessary in a society, in a family. They serve their own purposes. One is not able to be substituted for the other. And this is why we see that, single parent households can't replicate that ideal environment that having a biological mother and father in the home creates. Now, when I launched MasculineByDesign.com, the name that I chose for that, it was intentional. That it wasn't just Masculine by Design because we're designed by our Creator to be masculine as men. It wasn't that wasn't the sole reason. It's not solely a spiritual aspect to that name. I created this site because I recognize that there is a masculine design required for men to unleash their full breadth of masculinity on two fronts. So the first is, as I've mentioned, God's design. So God has designed men with the ability to unleash certain expressions of humanity on the world in ways that women cannot. So again, whether you're talking about love, where we love with truth and with wisdom, or we're talking about strength, where we have strong muscles, physical abilities that women do not have, or any other traits that are decidedly masculine, those were given by God. Or if you want to take a different approach based on your presuppositions, they were given by evolutionary biology or whatever your viewpoint might be. But there is a design to it that's outside of our control, that makes it exist and to be what it is today. Now, there's also a second part of that design, and that's man's design. And this is the dichotomy that really played into my naming of the site, Masculine by Design. And the second part is that I believe that men are only able to actualize the full scope of our masculinity when we design our lives around them. So we were created with this blueprint to have these characteristics. As an example, we were created to be physically strong, at least relative to women. But we still have to nurture that. The impetus is on us to train our bodies, to nourish them well, to make them strong. You know, by default, whether we train our bodies or not, you put a man and a woman next to each other who does no physical training, doesn't feed their body well, the man is going to be stronger than the woman, almost without exception. But a man still has to really unlock the full potential of that strength, that blueprint for strength that he's been given. He has to nurture it. He has to foster it. So God gives us the ingredients to release the different aspects of our masculinity, but we have to put them to use and not let them go to waste. Now, when I think about what it is to be masculine, to kind of come full circle here, I think it's not enough to simply be born male. You know, we don't have to look very far to see guys who are living in defiance of their masculinity. You know, these are guys that are submissive, they're unmotivated, they're lacking ambition, they're physically emaciated, they're timid, their lives are pathetic. They're subservient to women or other people in their lives who are basically telling them how to live. They don't have their own mission. These guys are not masculine. It doesn't matter whether they have testicles, doesn't matter how big their testicles are. They're not living a masculine life. They've repressed their masculinity, and it's not even really discernible at that point. And so that's the reason I write. That's why I created the site, again, is to keep men from going down that insufferable path. You know, I want to be a cure. I want to be the salve that drops the scales from their eyes, the way they've been conditioned to think in a feminine primary existence here culturally, so they can change that. They can harness their masculine energy. They can pursue greatness. So it's not really much of a surprise, given the cultural milieu that we're in, that so many men are living in desperate conditions with their masculinity so repressed that they wouldn't recognize it if they saw it. You know, we grow up collectively without masculine fathers in the home to teach us what it means to be a man, to be an example of masculinity for us. Masculinity is berated at every turn in the culture and media. You know, we're told that masculinity is the problem for all the world's issues since the beginning of time. And there are forces that are at work that try to steal that blazing fire of masculinity from within us, because masculinity makes trailblazers. It makes men on a mission. It makes men with purpose. It makes men that do not acquiesce to the status quo. It makes men that are not subservient to the power of suggestion. So these forces don't want masculine men. We can't be controlled, and they don't like that. So we have to remain vigilant against that enemy. And I don't subscribe to the conspiracy theory that it's necessarily a concerted effort and that's the purpose. I think it's a byproduct of the way our culture has gone, the way we've strayed away from traditional gender roles, the way that our morality has continued to decline, to where we can no longer recognize up from down, right from wrong, good from evil. And so that's the consequence. You know, a man doesn't see the power and value of his masculinity because there is no value placed on it. Everything is relative. There is no absolute truth. Whatever you do is best for you and good for you, whether it deviates from truth or not. So we have to resist, and we do that by understanding what it means to be masculine. That's what I try to do, guys, with these podcasts, with what I write, is to understand myself, to really reiterate it for me, and then feed it back to you guys so you understand what it means to be masculine, that you can design your life around that understanding. Design it around the blueprint that you've been created with as a man. It's specific to you as a man. Women don't have it. You have it, but it's up to you to unleash it. So this podcast is really, I guess if I can be kind of corny, it's a call to arms. You know, what I plan to do as well, so this is the first podcast in a series of what will be another 12, where I'm going to cover 12 different aspects that I believe cover what it means to be masculine. So these are the 12 aspects. We'll go through them. I'm going to talk about what those are, why they're important, how they're unique to men, and what you can do to design your life around those concepts so you can unleash your masculinity on the world. And so I'll go into those things. I'll give you an action guide in the podcast and articles I'll be putting out. And so my hope is that this podcast just really primes you for that you understand the importance of getting in touch with that masculine nature, that masculine frame that you have, and how the only way that you're going to find purpose, passion, and greatness in life is by connecting with it. And again, these podcasts that are going to be forthcoming and content that I'm going to be putting on masculinebydesign.com is as much for my benefit as it will be for yours. We all need that masculine flame rekindled at times. And so my hope is that you guys come along, we do this together, we build each other up as brothers, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. And that's what I'm hoping for the coming weeks as I go through these different aspects of masculinity, that you guys will leave comments on the blog so we can discuss these things together. You connect with me on Twitter at Masculine Design. And we all grow together because of that. That you share these things with men in your life, in your lives that need it. So if you were a man, if you're a man, you were born to be masculine. Okay. This is the truth. You can suppress it, and many men do, and it's to their own detriment, but I implore you to embrace it. And when you finally embrace it, you will see life through a different lens, and it will be a life that has opportunities you never thought were possible before you embrace that. It will be a life where people start to respect you because you command respect, because you earn that respect, not because you demand it, but because you command it. You'll maintain the masculine presence that you were designed to have, to be a leader, to be a man. So that's all I have for this podcast today. I hope this really pumps you up. And if you enjoyed this podcast, again, search for Masculine by Design Mancast on iTunes. Leave me a 5-star review. I love bringing you guys these podcasts. But I want to expand this reach. I want to make it more profitable, in terms of the value it's bringing to other people. Not necessarily to me, but I want this podcast to gain a greater reach. More men need to hear this message, and you can do your part by just leaving me a 5-star review. Take you 2 minutes of your time, and I'd be really thankful for that. And again, you go to masculinebydesign.com, pick up your free copy of my book, Masculine by Design, if you haven't done so already. That'll subscribe you to the site. You'll get updates whenever I post new content. We can stay up to date with each other. You can, again, leave me comments on the blog post that I have there. I'd love to interact with you guys. I'm here for you. I'm here for you to help give you some of the tools and experiences and knowledge that I picked up over the years, doing my best to live a masculine life, to unlock my masculinity, and to help you do the same in yours. So until next time, this is your boy, Craig James. I'm out.